Hey everybody, I'm Robert Kelly, VP of Innovation at Liatrio, and I'm here with
Damien Storm, Lead AI Enablement Engineer at Liatrio.
and Liatrio is an AI and technology modernization consultancy. We work with large, complex organizations to help them get better at building and delivering digital products at scale. And this has been all things cloud technology, platform engineering, app modernization. And for the past couple of years, we've been doing all of these things in an AI native way, really to the best of our ability, right? And that's what we're focusing on, really making sure this is something we can really do and make real for everybody. This is building an AI native organization. And for the next half hour or so, we're going to be talking about agent skills specifically and how this is one of the next steps to level up your team and larger org with AI native capabilities. So here's the problem statement. Most individuals are using AI and we're getting more done. We're able to do a lot more with AI. But delivering value gets a little tricky or maybe fragile when we want to kind of scale this out to the team. And as everybody's developing their own way of working, this gets a little bit fragile, like I said. This is because these workflows might have good context engineering or they might have good practices, but it hasn't become standard practice across the team and leveled up to the org. So a single engineer on a team might have a cracked multi-agent workflow. They have code review, security scans. They can generate a ton of great code, but that knowledge lives in their head, and the workflows are kind of local to their laptop, right? So someone else on the team might do it completely differently. These improvements might be real, but that practice might be siloed or inconsistent at the team or org level. And that's what we're here to talk through today. We're going to show how skills, specifically here, package the workflows your team already has and makes them real. So then the next person or the team or team of agents even can use that same approach. So this is a slide that bridges a little bit of what we did in our previous webinar, the AI native jumpstart, and takes kind of the next step here. So the point here is pretty simple. The skills are not a new theory, but they are a cleaner way to package these practices that we might have did, kind of manually or built through prompts previously. So back in March, we said reliable AI needs four things. We need direction, context, proof, and validation. These are the four things that are important. Today is about one specific capability that delivers all of these things and brings that to a team level. So it's not just so that your individual session or project is set to go and you have a great personal workflow, but it's packaged, repeatable, and it's loadable on demand in all of our agent sessions that we're working with. So let me hand this over to Damien, and we'll get right into those details.
Yeah, let's jump into it. So what is an agent skill? At the base level, it's just a folder. It's not some packaged object or deliverable or artifact that you have to go through a CI process to build. It's Markdown plus a few other files that you want to throw in as a reference. The top level one that you always need, it's a skill.md file. It's required. It's got the name, the description, and the core instructions. That's the heart of it. It's what the agent first sees when they want to understand what the skill does and how it can amplify their capabilities. You can add then other optional components to it. A references folder, this is where you're going to put deeper documentation and files that go even further into how the agent is going to accomplish a specific part of the skill or any other reference information they might need, like documentation on a particular CLI tool that you would need it to use, or other conventions that it needs to be aware of when it's using this skill for whatever problem you're throwing at it. Then you've got scripts, where these are the deterministic tooling that you will throw in to actually be able to have the agent run some code. Because the whole point of skills is to make something deterministic. So you're not depending so much on the token and the AI generating something every single time you need it to do a repeatable task. If you throw some code in there, some Python scripts, some Node scripts, something deterministic that lets the AI produce the same output or run the same function or run the same workload the same way every time, that shapes your skill and shapes this work that you need your agent to do in a deterministic way and make sure it's always going to look the same. It's always going to produce the same output. Say you need some very specific JSON structure from some action you're having the agent perform. This is where you can build a script for the agent to run to handle that for you. It doesn't have to figure out on the fly every single time you're running this skill to perform that deterministic action. Then you can throw in some templates. These are reusable output shapes. So things like if you want a very similar, always the same HTML report, something to present the findings or the output from this agent skill the same way every time. That's where you want to put these templates. Or say it's a specific markdown report, or even a more structured, maybe a code file. Like say you wanted to always generate a new Git repository, you could have templates in here for what that folder shape looks like. And then you've got an assets folder. This is where even more kind of esoteric stuff gets in there. Say you've got a style guide that you're writing, some kind of skill that your agent is going to use to make sure whatever outputs it generates always looks the same. This is where you can put in logos or images or specific types of headers, all sorts of different stuff that the skill will then be making available to the agent for it to reference whenever it's doing the work that you're throwing at it. And after we've got what it looks like, let's talk about where it fits. So we already talked a lot about these in the AI Native Jumpstart, and agent harnesses are really starting to consolidate on some core primitives that all of them have access to. That's one of the main benefits of agent skills. They're supported by all of the popular harnesses nowadays: Claude, Cursor, Codex, Windsurf, Hermes, a bunch of new ones. All of these are supporting the agent skill. It's become a standard now. So let's talk about where it fits in with the other primitives for agent harnesses. You've got at the top the prompt. That's the one-shot direction. That's where you're typing in the console and you hit enter, and that is the immediate direction you're giving the AI in that current turn of the conversation. Then a level up from that, you've got the agents.md or the claude.md. These are repo or project rules that you want to always be true. These get included with every single turn of the conversation. So there are things like always use git commits in this convention, or this project is about blah, blah, blah. These are things you always want the agent to be aware of throughout each turn of the context of the conversation. You always want them to be in that context window. And now we're adding agent skills. So this is the new primitive that we're talking about today, where these agent skills, the entire skill is not loaded in every turn of the conversation. Only the very top of it, the name of it and the description that you fill in, are loaded in every turn of the session. That way, the agent harness uses progressive disclosure to ensure that it's protecting your context window. It's not loading up the entire skill content, all of those tool definitions or scripts or templates, all of that stuff you got in there. Those are only loaded on demand when the agent realizes it needs to use this skill as part of the work you're getting it to do. Then we've got some other primitives here. We've got subagents also becoming ubiquitous in all of the agent harnesses now. They're separate workers where you can delegate tasks, or the agent can delegate tasks autonomously out to a separate worker to protect the context window or fan out and do things in multiple parallel options. Then you've got hooks. These are deterministic tools that the harness runs on specific parts of the agent loop, right? Maybe after it writes a file, it always runs some kind of better leaks hook to check the file if there's any leaks before it runs a commit or anything like that. Or you've got some kind of hook to do an analysis on what files were created for, PR, review, a bunch of different ways you can use hooks. And then we've got the oldest primitive, MCPs, Model Context Protocols. So these are the servers that provide a bunch of new capability to the agent, ways to access external data, ways to talk to different services. Everybody's very familiar with these nowadays, and they're going through changes, coming up with a lot of features. It's a great primitive to understand, very different than skills, and we're going to dive into a little bit more about how they're different as we get into how skills help keep the context clean. So one of the things that MCPs were really kind of a big struggle point for a lot of people. Whenever you load up an MCP, all of the tool calls, all of the tool definitions for that MCP get loaded into the context window for your harness. So that means if you load up an MCP that has 40 different tool definitions, that's 40 different description of tools that are now eating into your context window. Skills take that away because they no longer load up every component of the skill on the initial start of the conversation. So when you build out the skill, you've got the name and the description. Those are the most important parts you're going to build out. Those are the only two things that get loaded into the context window when you're building, when every session of the conversation gets built. So it just loads the name and the description, and that's it. And then the agent looks at the prompt and the context of the conversation to determine, okay, this skill, I know I have access to like all these different skills. I can see their names and descriptions. Do any of these match something I'm being asked to do in this conversation? And if they do, then it dynamically pulls in the rest of that skill to say, oh, all right, now I know a lot more about this. Say it's a way to interact with a particular database that you've got it connected to, or you want it to do some browser QA in a very specific way. When your prompt includes something about browser QA, it's going to tag on that skill description and say, okay, I need to pull in this additional knowledge, these additional skills and tools to help me accomplish this task for my user. And then from pulling in the description, pulling in the full content of the skill.md, it can fan out even further. It'll read the skill.md, then it will know from that skill.md if there's any references, scripts, or templates that it needs to pull in for even more capability on a dynamic pull in inside that conversation turn. And this is how these skills keep your context window very clean, right? They don't have to pull in all of this stuff at the beginning of every single turn of the conversation. Skills protect the context window by loading the playbook only when the task calls for it. And let's go on. We're going to talk a little bit more about how skills understand how to do that activation of a particular skill, right? So that's all handled by the description inside the skill. The description is the most important part. A lot of people underwrite this when they're writing their skills, but it's the part of the skill that the agent sees first and that they are always aware of. It's the one that comes into every conversation turn and keeps that awareness of the skill available to the agent for every single thing that they're doing. So let's go into a little more detail about what a good description looks like, right? You don't want the one on the left. You don't want it to be weak with low signal. It's not going to load at the right time. It doesn't have any trigger words. It just says help with PRs. The agent has nothing there that they can match against to know that this skill is something that's going to be useful for a particular task. If you look at the one on the right, we see a very good description, very good example of what these should look like. Reviews, pull requests for correctness, test coverage, security, inspect, prepare reviewer notes. A lot of keywords and explicit triggers in that description that are going to help the AI know when any of those show up in the prompts and in the context window, they need to pull in this skill to expand their capabilities dynamically on the fly so that they can expand what they're doing and expand how they can help you accomplish the task that you're trying to get the AI to accomplish for you. Let's see. Another thing I want to point out here, routing and descriptions are very important. Like this is how skills are designed so that they can be pulled in dynamically. You can still trigger them manually. It'll function just like a slash command that you've set up, a custom prompt or anything like that. Anytime you install a skill, it's going to show up in that way. So you can trigger it manually if you know it's a very specific pattern you want to use in your current part of the conversation with the AI. So let's go and dive through the anatomy of a skill we're going to demo in just a moment. All right. So we've developed this browser QA skill. It's a skill that exemplifies a pattern that all of us have had to do. When you're building a web app, you're working on some kind of web page, you want your AI agent to be able to validate and QA that web page for you. And now with a skill, you can specify exactly how it does that. You can give it the hard validations that it needs to do, give it specific checks, show it how you want it to present that information, and go into exactly how this skill is going to produce a reusable workflow for you and then for all of your team members once you share this skill out. This is also a good example of showing the concept of skill chaining. You can see it's got browser QA and then it goes into agent browser. Agent browser itself is a whole other skill. It's from Vercel. It's a very useful way to give your agent the ability to look at web pages and access web content without having to install an MCP like the Chrome DevTools MCP or the Playwright MCP. Having it as a skill and then using the agent browser CLI saves time, saves tokens, and saves context because it doesn't have to have that MCP loaded all the time. So the browser QA skill points at the agent browser skill. And then inside the skill.md, we've got workflow routing, cleanup, all the output rules, all the high level instruction that the agent needs to know to be able to use this skill effectively. Then within the references folder, we've got the definitions for exactly what checks this skill is going to have the AI go through. And we've also got the explanation of the JSON contract. So that HTML report template down at the bottom is powered by a JSON contract. So it just loads it up almost like an API call. We need to make sure that the agent always returns exactly the right JSON contract. Otherwise, our template's not going to work. So that's where we get into the script, right? The references talk about exactly what the contract should look like. And then in the scripts, we've got a validate findings Python script that will look at that JSON contract. The agent knows to use that script to validate the contents of that JSON contract to make sure that it's going to feed that HTML template correctly every time. And then in the templates folder, we've got that actual definition for the report template. And that definition is what going to feed the proof summary we've got demonstrated on the left here. I'm sorry, on the right. So we've got console page errors, failed requests, keyboard navigation, viewport readability. All of these are now deterministic checks that this skill is going to show the agent how to do every time you reference this skill, or even if you just say in a plain chat, hey, the browser QA, I need you to run this on this page here. We'll show you an example of doing that in the next section. But before we get into actually running a skill, let's talk about how you're going to install these skills. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this. You can write them locally. You can keep them in a repo inside your team's shared repositories. You can even install them from a shared directory, something like skills.sh. That is a marketplace provided by Vercel that lets everyone access a bunch of new skills, a bunch of skills that are vetted, that are publicized and evaluated in very useful ways. It's like any other marketplace. You can go here, you can search for skills from popular vendors, from people like Cursor. Vercel has a ton of skills that they've got up there. Many vendors, like for instance, there's a Terraform skill that teaches your agent how to use Terraform in the way that the Terraform, that HashiCorp wants them to do it. So there's a lot of great ways to get these shared and distributed. Skills.sh is a great place to start. You can see we've got some of the examples of what those commands look like. There's just 3 steps. You know, you run the install command, then you can verify it, and then you can just reference those skills in your natural language commands to your agent. So let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and get some of these installed and see what these skills look like when they're working. Right, so I'm going to switch over to my terminal now and we'll get some of these installed and then run a couple of examples. All right, so we're using 2 skills in this demo. We're going to install the agent browser one first. I'm using the dash dash global and dash dash yes here just for brevity. I've already installed these multiple times. I know how it works. We'll see the output. You can see that it downloaded the Git repository and it selected the skill from that repo. It's installing it to at the global level. So all of these agents that I'm using are going to have access to this skill. And you can see here, another thing that I like about skills.sh, it's got security risk assessments built into these skills. That's one of the advantages of using a marketplace is you can have these deterministic evaluations for each of the skills and know that you can trust the content of the skill and be ready for and trust that it's going to work the way you want and it doesn't have any security issues. And then we've got information about where it installed it. And there we go. It's done and ready to use. So let's go ahead and get the other skill installed. This one is from our Liatrio Labs AI prompts repo. It's open source. You will have links at the end so you can go and check it out. This is the browser QA skill that we built specifically for this demo to exemplify a very routine, reusable workflow that a lot of people are going to need to access in their day-to-day software development. So let's get this one installed. Same flow here. We've got it installed into all of our agents. Installation summary. We're missing the verification here because this skill is very new. So it hasn't met skills.sh probably has some kind of threshold for installs or something before it will run those deterministic checks. But we've got it installed. Well, again, we'll throw the links out so you can see the content of this skill, see exactly how it works. And now that we've got it up and running, or sorry, installed, let's go ahead and get Claude running and let's kick off a review of this. So we're just going to tell it run a browser QA pass on the Liatrio website. You notice here we don't have to specify the name of the skill or anything directly related to the skill. Because of those keywords in the description, those keywords are going to trigger the AI to pull in this skill automatically whenever the prompt goes through. Yep, you can see the very first thing it said, I'll use the browser QA skill for this. And it loaded it up, and now it's loaded up the agent browser skill. So that's an example of the skill chaining that we talked about earlier. And it's going to go through and start testing the Liatrio website. One of the coolest things about Agent Browser, so this is all like behind the scenes. We can't really see what it's doing, but you can see here it actually started a dashboard. That's one of the things I love about Agent Browser. You can Let's see, yep, there we go. We can see this agent browser session. It started up specifically for the request that we did. You can get a live view of what the agent browser is doing and see as it goes through and starts testing out the website. It's a great way to keep tabs on one of those kind of background processes that an agent's doing in the background that you're not going to have visibility into. Let's go take another look at Claude, see what he's doing here. Yep, it's found a couple of warnings it's going to go through. Yeah, so we're going to let this cook for a couple minutes. While it's cooking, Robert, can you tell me what's some of the skills that you've been using lately that have been really helping out with your day-to-day workloads?
Well, I think we've already touched on some of those things. We're going to get into a little bit later with the spectrum and development workflow. It's been really key to a lot of the work we're doing, making sure that we have a repeatable process for building software in a really good software in a repeatable way, right? And being able to package that up and put that into a skill has made it super easy for me to just work through that process and not have to maintain that context in my head about what steps to follow at the right order. But ultimately, like the agent browser for validating the things that we're creating that are front end websites and things like this, we're doing this just about every day. So these are really key to what I'm doing. So there are a slew of other skills that come out with you mentioned deep research, I think potentially a little bit
Hmm.
earlier. Do a lot of deep research for industry trends and a lot of the things that we're building, all the content that we've built in our company over several years, right? Pulling all of that together so that we can summarize and pull that in for any new content we're creating. So these are things I use every day.
Very cool. You can see here the skill went through all the different steps that we outlined, right? It wrote some JSON after going through all the checks. JSON was there to capture all of the findings it had. Then it went through and validated the findings. It ran that validate findings script against the JSON. And look, it came back with a couple of errors. It fixed them. And now we've got our report here. So this is just the terminal output from where it ran those checks, but it also started the server that's built into the skill, so we can look at the output from this in a much friendlier human available way. Let's see. Let me go back, see what's going on here, why it's not loading this one up. And it looks like Claude actually found a little bit of a bug here with our skill. Yeah, so it wrote the report in the wrong location. So that's an example of an evaluation that we could add to this skill, something to make sure that it actually writes the file in the exact correct place. This is one of the things that you can go through and do some testing for when you're doing these skills. You can create evaluations for them to make sure they're working exactly the way they're supposed to. So let's click the link here. There we go. Now we've got our report. It's in the right spot. And you can see these are all the findings from that report. It's in from that QA pass. It's got an excellent format. It's got very high visibility, all the different things that we would need to address, all the different findings. It's got screenshots that it put in from the actual browser testing, different functionality located in here. So this is a very basic example of how you can take a common workflow, QAing a website in a browser, and now you can hand this off to any one of your engineers so that they can use their AI agents to check the work they're doing, scope it, and get a repeatable pattern and process for a very common use case of software development. So let's go back to our deck here. Yeah, so now we went through that one. Let's talk a little bit about how we've updated the Spectre and development package to also become a skill, right? So when we built this out, we built this out before skills were even created. Skills were first released from Anthropic back in December of 2025, so a little over 6 months ago. So skills are still very new in terms of the AI ecosystem. We built SDD before that as custom prompts. These are slash commands that you would run directly inside in your cloud, in your cloud agent workflow, right? So you would just do slash SDD1, then you'd have to remember, oh, I need to do slash SDD2, and you'd have to go through it automatically. We've now upgraded the SDD workflow to be a skill that has deterministic routing built into it. So inside that skill.md, it has a pointer to a new Python script that assesses the state of the STD workflow based on the files inside the directory you're working in, and then does it automatically. So now it's just one invocation. You just have to do slash STD, and the skill has logic in it that is deterministic. It's not based on Markdown anymore. It's actual script output that will figure out where you are in the phases and in the workflow and then walk through it. It also gives us the opportunity to add some evaluations to the SDD workflow. So we have an evaluator for that assess SDD state Python script. We've also got evaluations for the outputs, making sure that the outputs that SDD generates match exactly what are expected. So each input for the next phase gets the appropriate data from the output from the previous phase. So let's go through and show a little bit about how that works. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and get the skill installed again. Let's go back to the terminal. Yeah, so let's go ahead and close out of this session. And let's see, show you guys there's nothing in this folder when in a brand new, completely empty folder. I've already got the SDD skill installed in the background. So let's go back to, yep, you can see that it's there. Execute the spectrum and development. One of the things that's important to remember about skills is you don't have to always depend on the deterministic evaluation. You can call them directly from a prompt, like we mentioned earlier. You can also feed information into that prompt. So we're going to go ahead and invoke the skill directly and throw in my go-to SDD tester, like just build me a simple Python calculator app. This is not a lot of a direction, but it's enough for the agent to get going. So let's kick this off and see what we get. Right, the first thing it did is it ran that assess SDD state skill. And you can see here, it figured out that there's no specs directory, there's no existing specs in here already. We're in phase one. So it used a deterministic loop to figure out where it needed to start. And now you can see it's read the SDD1 generate spec. So this is a good example of the skill having multiple reference files within that reference folder, and only loading up the specific one it needs for this part of the skill. There's files in that reference folder for each of the four phases, It didn't read the other ones because it knows, all right, I'm only in phase one. I don't need to do all of the other stuff for phase twos, three, four. That protects your context window. That protects the agent from pulling in a bunch of stuff it doesn't need to. Yep, you can see we've got the scope assessment, clarification, all of the stuff that you're used to seeing with SDD now in a skill package and with one command for invoking it. And it should be creating our folders, and it's going to create the file. As soon as this finishes up, we'll look at the file real quick. Let's take a peek here. Yep, there's our file. All right, and we've got our doc specs folder, and you can see here it prompted you just like it does in the other STD spec that you can go ahead and continue with the STD flow right here in this chat, or you can start a completely new one. Let's demonstrate that. So now we're in a completely new session, still in the same folder, right? We've got our docs folder, and within that, our spec. Um, let's look at that. There we go. We've got our docs and our spec folder and our spec that it created in the first step, but we're in a completely new session, new context window. If we just invoke STD without any additional context in the prompt, we'll see it's going to run that assessor script again, find the new files. There we go. Yep, it's discovered. All right, we're still in phase one. We've got some clarifications that we need to answer in there. So it's going to prompt us to answer those, and then we would continue into the other states. This is an example of how you can build in some deterministic code-based workflows into your skills. These will help save you time and tokens from having the AI determine on its own through markdown logic. Like essentially you're writing all the logic in there. This way you don't have to worry about it and it does it deterministically. So that's an example of how you can, we've upgraded our skills to work with the new format, and STD now works as a skill. It's the recommended way for everybody to use it going forward.
Yeah, and let me comment
S-
on that specifically here for the SDD approach. You saw Damien, he was able to go through the first step of building a feature, building a product, and you'll see like he was able to clear his context and start from scratch. And ultimately, this is important because these features, these products are rarely built by one person at a team. If we're talking about building enterprise software. So we're able to get to a certain point in building a feature, working through our workflow, commit these things, and somebody else on the team could pick up exactly where Damien left off. And that's huge for being able to level these things up and say we're not just working on my feature and in my branch. We're able to make sure that hey, this is a team level workflow, and I could pick up exactly where Damien left off.
Yep, yep. It's the whole reason, one of the biggest reasons we built STD is having those deterministic flows that are very specific and very repeatable. So now that we've shown a couple demos of how you can use skills, let's talk a little bit about how you would approach writing one yourself. First thing, think about it find some small aspect, some small job that you need to do. That's the way to keep it very dry, keep it single responsibility, and also help you avoid trying to build too much too fast. Skills can get really complicated. You want to make sure that what you're building is repeatable and small enough for the agent and whatever humans are using it to digest. Think about things like progressive disclosure and keeping the actions you want the skill to perform small enough that they can be chunked in appropriate ways. So name it correctly, keep it small, a concrete verb, a concrete object, and remember to keep your description full of all the triggers and the keywords and everything that you want it to action on whenever the AI is going through your conversations. You want those descriptions and that name to be very explicit about what situations the AI is going to use this skill for. Then, keeping your skill MD short. Don't create 1,000 line skill.md file. It's going to overload the agent's context window and it's not using disclosure appropriately. You want to have different sections of the skill used in your references folder and accessed only when they're needed. Just like we saw in the STD skill, it only pulled in phase one of the STD because that's where we were. It didn't have to pollute the context with all of the other ones. Like we're talking about moving deeper into the references. Load those details only when they're needed. And then on the other side, we've got deterministic work in scripts. If you can put something in some code, if you can save some time and some tokens so that the code does it instead of depending on an LLM call out to an API to burn through your tokens, do it. Get it into the code, make it deterministic, make it repeatable so that other people and other agents will use it the same way every time. Same thing, same idea in output shapes and in templates. You want to have some structured outputs, some concrete ways that you want your outputs from the actions your agents are doing to look the same every way. You want those repeated runs to always produce the same shapes. And then testing. So as we saw with the browser QA thing, you want to go through and test these things very explicitly. You want to find the edge cases. You want to find ways to put in some evaluations for those critical paths, like making sure that the agent always puts the files it needs in the right place so that those template files can load them appropriately. And then find out your other edge cases. Also make sure you're testing your routing. We've got some very specific tests for the SDD skill on that routing script to make sure that no matter the structure and the layout of the docs folder, if you've got four specs all in different states, it's going to route you to the correct place for the next phase of SDD and what you want to do. It's really important to get into those evals and into that testing of your skill, especially if you're going to be distributing these. You want your teams to have the same experience, have a repeatable, dependable way that they can use these skills. Evals are how you keep the skill behavior honest and help keep it contained as the workflows grow. Let's see. I think, yeah, so that gets
Yeah.
us into governance. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is important, and I might be restating some of this, but I think we really want to drive some of this home. So, agents and agent skills are a new type of software, but they are software, right? So, we need to think about the things we've always thought about: file system permissions, execution sandboxing, how we scope credentials, things like that. We think about those things with software all the time. But what's different is the prompt layer, right? And that's something that can really get in the way if we're talking about some of the non-determinism that's happening behind the scenes, right? Because the model's making a decision about what code or what to execute. So we can still get exploited through prompt injection. This is a new muscle that has to be developed here, and we have to understand that what's actually happening behind the scenes. So we think everyone at this point should be building their own internal skills marketplace with its own SDLC. We mentioned that a little bit here before, where we're validating things like least privilege access, all of the signing our artifacts, dependency scanning, the things we think about when we're building any software, right? This is software, so we want to make sure that we're gating the tools that get executed and attempt to make sure we can what we can version, but we still want to bundle these agents in a way that we can, and these skills specifically, so we can run the evals like Damien mentioned in the previous slide, and make sure we're treating them just like any other piece of software we're building. And that's where collaboration is super important now, more than ever, right? Because we want to make sure these things are good and they stay good and they get reused at the team level. But you got to start somewhere, and I think that's the important piece here. So uh, we think it's important to start with one skill and make that work for yourself and your team. This is super important. This is kind of standard guidance before you're promoting these things widely. You got to make sure they work. You can pick one workflow that works for you, codify that into a skill, and then commit that to your repos and to your skills marketplace, and commit to using it across the team. And that's a great approach we think everyone can use to get started. It's you start small and just start building. Damien,
Yep.
anything else?
Absolutely. The next step for this is not everyone trying to get better at one-off prompts, right? We're all getting familiar with AI and agents and how to use these things. Now we're moving into the next phase, finding ways to share those findings, share those patterns, make them reusable, and get teams writing down how they work so they can share it and they can test it and they can give their agents and their coworkers safe ways to get this acceleration that the AI is bringing to all of us. We want to get this stuff shared so you can all be successful.
I think that just about wraps it up here. I know we tried to jam a lot of content in here pretty quick, but I think that this is super important for sort of the next steps in what we're building to make these things just repeatable, like these workflows that we think are really important to building high quality software at scale. This is just one of those things that we can do. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. You can check out our website, liatrio.ai. Got some of these other links you can check out. We're going to be sharing out some of the other content with the deck as well. Some of our repos you can go and check out that we shared here today. But it's really awesome spending time with you today, and we hope that you found this informative and useful.
Thanks for joining, y'all.
Have a good day.